The theme of this meditation is on the journey of the Magi. We don't usually come to the Magi until Epiphany, but we're going to be thinking about them setting out on their journey. We are going to use a very traditional form of meditation using our imagination. And I want to, before we start the meditation, just give you a little bit of background. So the imagination plays a crucial part in our prayer life, and this goes back to Saint Ignatius of Loyola, who recognised this and acted upon it, encouraging his readers to visualise and enter into gospel stories by making maximum use of their senses and feelings as well as their minds and wills. The imagination can unlock some of the doors that have previously prevented us from becoming completely open to God. So, writing in the spiritual exercises back in the 15th century, St. Ignatius showed how we could use the imagination and our senses to enter into the life of Jesus. And that's what we are going to practice, but we're going to be getting into the story of the Magi. And the approach we take is to first of all read the portion of the Bible we're going to contemplate. So effectively, St. Ignatius called this reading the history of the mystery, so getting the facts straight, reminding ourselves perhaps of some of the historical details. But then we set that aside and then allow our imaginations and senses to roam freely, using our mind's eye and trying to conjure the scene as vividly as possible. In fact, ideally we become part of the scene, placing ourselves alongside the other characters. St. Ignatius suggested that from time to time we ask ourselves certain questions, and in today's meditation I will be prompting some of these as we go through. What can I see? What do the characters and the scenes look like? What are the characters saying? What else can I hear? What are they doing? But we're also prompted to ask ourselves questions. What can I learn from them? What can I learn from my reactions? Where am I? So the key is to remember that the details are not important. We all have different types of imagination. Some of you will be able to see, smell and hear all sorts of things in great detail. For others it might be a bit of a blur, but don't worry about that. The most important thing is that we come through using our imagination to know a little bit more about God and the reality of Jesus. So let's begin our meditation by first of all listening to the story of the Magi from Matthew's Gospel. It can be found in chapter 2, and I'm going to read from verses 1 to 11. So make sure you're sitting comfortably. You might perhaps want to close your eyes. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem, in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. I want to ask you to imagine that you are a reporter. You've been dispatched to go and investigate an astrological phenomenon, the appearance of a new star. And you understand that there are a group of astrologers, wise men, gathering. Having seen this star, these are people who are studying the skies, and they have seen this new star and it's on the move. And so they've decided that they're going to track the progress of this new star. So imagine you're just arriving at the scene. There's a lot of hustle and bustle as they pack for the journey. Perhaps you can imagine the animals Can you make out which ones the Magi are yet? Perhaps work your way through the crowd to see if you can find them. What can you see? What can you hear? Is it noisy? Can you hear the sound of the animals? People shouting to one another. You see what you think of the Magi gathered talking to one another. What are they wearing? How do they look? Ordinary? Wealthy? To go over to them, introduce yourself. What do you want to ask them? They talk of the star. So as night falls, look up at the sky. What do you see? How do you feel looking at this star, this new star, this bright star, brighter than the others in the sky? A star that can also be seen in the full light of day. What are you going to tell your viewers about the star? How did you feel seeing it for the first time? Look around you, perhaps ask one or two other eyewitnesses how they felt when they first saw the star. And then there seems to be some commotion. It seems as if the caravan is setting off. And you decide to go along with them on the journey to record this historic and momentous event. What sort of terrain do you pass through on your journey? Look around you, what can you see? Is the going easy or tough? What's the mood of the people in the caravan with you? Are they excited? Puzzled? Unsure? Talk to the Magi again. Find out why they are so convinced that they will find a new born king. How do you feel about seeking a newborn king? One whom the prophets have foretold. One evening in the camp, the Magi show you some of the gifts that they have been carrying, that they're bringing to offer to this new king. What can you smell? The rich spices. What can you see? Precious metals and precious stones. You realise that you haven't anything to offer. What are you going to give when you meet this newborn king? So I'd encourage you now, as we come away from that scene, just to stay with those thoughts and perhaps pick up some paper and a pen and write down some of the things that you've seen and heard and felt. And perhaps continue on with the story. Or perhaps you want to turn your thoughts into prayers, to speak some words to God. Or perhaps you just want to sit and let the experience just wash over you, and perhaps a particular thought that came to you or a particular image, just to sit with that. Spend as long as you want, continuing to experience the journey of the Magi. And perhaps later in Advent you might want to rejoin them as they enter Jerusalem, as they meet with Herod, as they journey on to Bethlehem, following the star, until indeed they find the place where the child was born. And they have the opportunity to offer their gifts. And perhaps at that point you can too think about the gifts that you want to offer